So, I have this thing about the smell of hallways. I have no idea where the obsession came from, but there's something so sublime about the smell of the carpets and classrooms of Row Hall when the first day of spring hits and every student's heartbeat quickens with the prospect of summer. I crave this perfume more than anything. April arrives in Pittsburgh, and I throw open the upstairs windows in my house, allowing the sultry breeze to seep into the floorboards and release all of the winter's frustrations into the air. The smell lingers in libraries, churches, the Benedum Center downtown, the big music hall at Carnegie Museum of Art. It's what I remember best about my old school Ellis, and it's probably what I'll remember best about Shady Side. The smell of books and fresh grass and warm air and people just living. Somehow, it evokes the sense that my future is absolutely limitless. Hi, my name is Annabel Everett, and this is my senior sage. In some alternate universe, the words I just spoke are echoing off the rafters of Rao Theater, which has a great smell, by the way, and I can faintly make out the faces of my peers in the rows and aisles below. But this is not an alternate universe, and I am painfully aware that this was not a normal Shady Side year, especially for my class, who patiently waited 4 years for a senior year that we will never get. But I don't want to talk about loss, because I've spent the better part of this year doing that, and I think that we can all agree that though we are fully entitled to our grievances as a result of the pandemic, we also must recognize how insanely privileged and lucky we are for our health and to have continued in-person school, which, might I remind you, was not the reality of most American high schoolers. So, instead of using this time to complain about everything I didn't get throughout my high school experience, I'd like to share what I did. Something I learned in an English class this year is that the best way to show gratitude is to love. So, consider this a love letter to Shady Side. I may not know what it's like to have a senior campout, a final Mem Hall choir concert, or a senior year without masks, but here's what I do know. I know the feeling of watching the clock tick down the final seconds of the Whitfield Championship game when you know you're about to win. I know the feeling of the flushed cheeks that result from a choir concert, and I know how historic it feels to be in the school buildings after dark. I know the feeling of watching the white paper programs fly into the air in front of Row as that year's senior class become graduates, knowing that someday I'd be in their seats. I know the feeling of trying to hold in laughter during a freshman study hall, and I also know the feeling of laughing so hard that you pee your pants in the Hillman parking lot after a late tech rehearsal. Thank you to Mark Fire and David McCullough for that. I know the feeling you get while standing behind the stage curtain as the orchestra begins to play the opening number of the musical, palms sweaty and shaking a little, but adrenaline coursing through every vein. I know the feeling of writing an essay that I am really proud of. I know the feeling of being late to almost every first period class for only 4 extra minutes of sleep. Sorry, Miss Yam. I know what it feels like to be completely infatuated with Shady Side and all of its gifts, but I also know what it feels like to struggle with all of its challenges. I know what it feels like to be inadequate, untalented, unlikable. I know what it feels like to put on an outfit in the morning and then feel completely uncomfortable with myself for the rest of the day. Eve Mango can attest that I literally change my outfit 10 times before we leave my house. I know what it feels like to be constantly competing for something, whether it's a grade or a spot on a team or in a performance, or even for popularity or likability among friends. I know what it feels like to go to a school small enough to add so many extra complications to friendships and relationships. Trust me, I know what it feels like to walk past someone who you don't even talk to anymore. And when I really boil it all down, I know what it's like to not know. I still don't really know how to dress, how to be a good friend, how to not procrastinate a 5-page essay until the night before it's due. What I do know, or what I've learned rather, is that high school is made up of so much uncertainty, both good and bad, and that figuring out how to love and embrace all of that for what it is has been integral in shaping my character. I didn't like everything about my time here. Far from it, actually. I struggled with a lot of things, as all teenagers do. I didn't like the stress of a private education, or the awkwardness of being young, or the race to get to college, or the uncertainty of growing into myself. I think people underestimate and forget how difficult it is to be this age, how hard it is to not know who you are yet or what you want to do with your life. It's a challenge just to get up every day and put a version of yourself out there without even really knowing if it's true to who you are yet. But what I can tell you is that even in all of that uncertainty and pain and awkwardness, at some point in the midst of high school, and I couldn't even really tell you when it happened, I figured out how to steep myself in all of it and to really, truly love coming of age. I still loved things like driving to school in the mornings and playing dress-up in the costume rooms with my castmates and lying in the sun on the quad during a free period, but I also learned how to love the crushing loss of our final Whitfield field hockey game my freshman year, the pain of a heartbreak, and tough conversations I sometimes had to have with friends, and the sting of seeing a C+ on the front page of the math final I studied 12 hours for. Through all of it, the good and the bad, I learned to love growing up at Shady Side. You can always find the bad in the high school experience that you were given. You can hate that the AP was ridiculously difficult. It was. That one senior boy broke your heart, that you're stressed about college applications, that you lost the golden year of high school to the pandemic. You can choose to not find the good and the romantic in what can seem like a dreary existence. But if you can't use the bad to learn something about yourself, if all you do is let it suck, then you're misunderstanding what it really means to be educated. I think gratitude is so much more than just acknowledging the good. It's also facing the bad head on and letting yourself learn from those moments when you feel the most scared or uncomfortable or insecure. Along with absorbing all of the good that SSA has to offer, like the smell of the row hallways in spring, I urge you all to steep yourself in as many moments as you can, especially the seemingly bad ones. Just to be clear, I'm not saying we should live forever in darkness and despair, and getting help when the bad seems to be taking control of everything else is of course necessary. But striking that balance between appreciating the good moments and embracing the humility in the bad ones has taught me so much more about what it means to be a student and what it means to be wholly educated. I'm serious when I say that I learned more about myself as I sobbed openly to Miss Yam, crippled with self-doubt, fear, and grief, than I ever did during a unit of chem. All of that hard work in your classes means absolutely nothing without doing the much harder work of bettering yourself as a person. I figured out that while trying to educate myself to be a better student and learning all of those things for history and English and math and science and French, I was also educating myself on how to be a good person. You get to a place your senior year where all you can really remember from high school is the stuff that you had to grow from. And it's funny when you realize that a lot of that stuff wasn't learned in the classroom. Don't get me wrong, I value my education here more than anything, but it would be completely worthless if I hadn't also valued my character. As the late great Angela Irvine said, "For what use is a fabulous intellect unless it is informed and guided by a good heart?" I really believe that a good heart is shaped by the full spectrum of experiences that one faces here at Shady Side, not just the academic and not just the good. Let high school be all in all. Love it for the good, the funny, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, the angsty, the tragic, the exciting. That is the way that you develop a good heart, and that is what it means to be a Shady Side student. Thank you to the family, the friends, and the faculty who helped me figure that out. I'd like to think that when I graduate next month, I'm taking with me both a fabulous intellect and a good heart. Thank you.